Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good lunch, wherever you are, or even morning, wherever you are in Canada or in other parts of the world. Welcome to the session today at the P2P conference. The session today is entitled Immigration Work and New Technologies. It's a two-part session. So we have one session now, and after the break, we're going to have a second session. I'll remind everyone of this after the fact. My name is Mireille Paquet. I'm a professor in political science and the director of the Concordia Institute for research on migration and society. And I'm joined with amazing presenter this afternoon that are going to highlight their research on issues having to do with work, with technologies, and with integration. Before going forward, I'll simply do a quick introduction to the panel. Introduce the presenter by name and institutions, and then I will open the door or open the floor to the first presenter. We have decided to proceed one presentation at a time and to open for questions for all presenters at the end. We've also opened the chat. So on top of the Q&A function, you can also write comments and exchange in the chat session. We strongly encourage you to do so because I think that while we have specialists who are presenting, the issues that we're going to be touching today are issues that are probably that you are interacting with and having experience with in your daily practice. So I'm just going to read our description for the panel, and then I'll let other people come in and pin everyone because there's a lot of action on this Zoom. So I'll try to be able to make sure to do everything. So the description that was presented by the team, the organizer, Marie-Jeanne Blain, myself, Mylène Coder, and Emile Barry, goes as follows. So the labor market is undergoing multifaceted transformation driven by processes of digitalization with profound implication for the professional trajectories of immigrants. So, from recruitment and selection of new workers to access to employment, entrepreneurship, and employability services, these emerging dynamics exert a significant influence on the ways in which immigrant careers unfold. Technological innovations, together with normative framework, they embed within the world of work from critical reflection on digital equity, potential form of surveillances and control, as well as the opportunity to create. So this workshop will convene researchers who are working in the settlement sector, as well as researchers from a variety of disciplines, from political science, development studies, anthropology, critical geography, HR, labor studies. And so without further ado, I'm going to just introduce quickly our first presenter this morning. So we will start by a presentation by Mylène Coder, who's a senior researcher at the Institute for Research on Migration and Society at Concordia. Mylène, can you do a hello so that everyone, excellent. Then we have a presentation by Marika Jezirogek, a PhD candidate in global governance at Wilfrid Laurier University at the Basile School of International Affairs. Sadly, Marika is sick and cannot join us in person, but she's done an amazing video presentation that we're going to screen for all of you. And we are also going to keep the question you might have or you want to add in the chat, and we'll communicate those to her because I know how valuable these can be for PhD students, especially when meeting people on the field. Then we have a presentation by Marie-Jeanne Blain, as co-presenting a paper by myself, Gwenaëlle André, as well as with a collaboration from Iris O, who's in the room with us. And then we have Marco Campagna from Knowledge Mobilization and Social, who is a Knowledge Mobilization and Social Action Coordinator with Access Alliance Multicultural Health and Community Service. So can you do a hello as well, Marco? Awesome. So without further ado, then I propose that we let Mylène, I'm sorry, start our presentation. And as a reminder, we have questions at the end of all the panels, but you can always write your questions in the chat or in the Q&A as we go. And Mylène, I will count the time, but I know that you will stay within the time because you always stay within the time. So the floor is yours, Mylène.
Thank you, Mireille. I will share my screen. Just tell me if you see the presentation, the slides. Everything's good? Great. So, hello everyone. I'm very pleased to begin this panel. So, I have this opportunity to share with you some key insights from a research and ongoing research project on migrant labor recruitment. And today I will particularly focus on how technologies have changed or have shaped new ways of selecting migrant workers from outside Canada. Why recruitment? Why talking about recruitment? Recruitment of migrant workers is a revealing lens through which we can understand the digitalization of migration, because recruiters don't just match Canadian employers with workers, migrant workers. They also act as gatekeepers. They decide who gets in and how. And in doing so, when we look at their practices and their uses of technologies, we can better understand the digital aspect of both the ways migration is regulated, but also controlled. And this is the focus of my presentation today. So just to give you some context before moving to the recruitment practices of recruiters, migrant labor recruitment is a thriving industry in Canada. As you can see on the map, where data is available, we can see that there are several hundreds of agencies registered. And we know that the total number is certainly higher because some recruiters are just not tracked. And in some provinces, like Ontario, which is a major destination for temporary migrant workers, the licensing system doesn't allow us to distinguish between agencies who recruit locally, that is Canadian citizen, permanent residents, and temporary residents in Canada, and those who recruit internationally. So the number of recruitment agencies specialized in recruiting migrant workers abroad is unknown for this province. So what can explain the importance of the migrant labor recruitment industry in Canada? Obviously, and probably you have noticed in your daily practice, but there is an increasing demand of Canadian employers for temporary migrant workers. We know that it's a trend that is well established since the 2000s, but it has also accelerated significantly in the past years. And so we have more and more Canadian employers, new employers who turn to temporary foreign workers program, both the TFWP and the IMP, International Mobility Program, to fill in labor shortages. But it's not the only reason. The policy context also explains the expansion of this industry. Why? Because the complexity, but also the frequent changes to immigration policies and rules make it very difficult, both for employers and migrant workers, to navigate the procedures to get a work permit, an LMIA. And so in this context of complexity and instability, it makes recruitment agencies almost indispensable resources for companies who wish to recruit a worker abroad outside of Canada, and also for worker to come here and work in Canada. So in this context, we wanted to know the idea of this research project was to understand the inner working of this industry, and more particularly, we focus on understanding how do these agencies select migrant workers, and how do they assist them both before their arrival to Canada and throughout their stay in the country. And we also want to know how they incorporate technologies to these practices of selection and assistance. And so the data collection is based on different methods. So we completed this winter an online survey with 115 licensed recruiters in Canada. We also did in-depth interviews with 20 of them. That was completed in spring and summer, this summer. And there is also an ongoing activity of observing posts made by recruitment agencies on social media platforms. And for these presentations, I will share some key insights from all these three data collection methods. So not surprisingly, what the survey showed to us, it was not a surprise, is that recruitment of migrant workers is increasingly digitalized. So when we ask survey respondents to what extent they rely on online tools to recruit migrant workers, most of them said that they carry out their activities mostly virtually. But interestingly, they also said that it has increased slightly or strongly in the past 3 years. So it shows that the digitalization is also an increasing trend. But, and this is important for this presentation today, it remains a low-tech field in the sense that very few have adopted advanced technologies, especially AI, to recruit migrant workers. But in comparison, they reported using frequently social media. We can think of Facebook, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, meeting platforms, Google Meet, for example, for interviewing candidates, and job websites to advertise employment opportunities in Canada. But this reliance on low-tech tools raised some issues in the sense that in the interviews, participants said that it opens business opportunities because they are not required to be physically present in the countries where they recruit. They also have greater access to a greater pool of candidates. But at the same time, we see that these low technologies also create new ways to filter migrant workers and to control or shape their behavior so that they fit into a certain ideal type. So just to discuss a little bit of how how technologies makes possible. So we can, some recruiters, especially during the interviews, explain very explicitly that they target platforms according to the desired candidate's profile. And so they can apply filter according to nationality. So if you have an example of one recruiter interviewed in this project who said, if we need Chinese, we put WeChat. If you need Indian, you go to Telegram. So he really adjusts his choice of recruitment platform according to the nationality he targets. But there is also other filters that can be applied by the choice of the platform. Age, for example. So here we have another example of a recruiter who is mainly recruiting through Facebook, but she's disappointed because she cannot reach younger workers, which she thought are a better fit for a job in Canada. So she said, this is a problem because youth don't use Facebook. And so I end up reaching an older pool of workers. Sometimes I have to refuse good candidates because at their age, learning French will be too difficult. Young people are on TikTok. So in that case, this recruiter planned to change our recruitment strategy in order to target a younger group of workers. But you can also filter migrant workers through your online ads. And so I give you two examples. One of them, all the ads have been anonymized, so we cannot recognize the recruitment agency. But here we have an example where candidates are filtered according to gender, age, and height. So in that case, the agency specifically recruit men between 28 to 45 years old and taller than 170 centimeters. So obviously these are criteria that are discriminatory and prohibited in Canada. Another example of filters. So here we have another ad where the selection is based on gender, age, same than the other, but also marital status. And it is specified as a mandatory requirement. So they're looking specifically for men married or in a civil union. So these filters, what is interesting, I mean, scientifically speaking, is that it means that during the selection process, recruiters will also verify the compliance with these requirements, meaning that they can measure height of candidates. They can also request proof of relationship, for instance. So this is a way where digital tools expand the possibilities of filtering migrant workers. But they can also control their behavior. So we frequently see online recruitment posts made by recruitment agencies promoting some behaviors and discouraging bad ones before coming to Canada, but also while workers are in Canada. So here, another example of an agency telling workers selected to not fall into bad habits. And bad habits, they mean no smoking, not drinking alcohol, not taking taking drugs. And so we see that they're not only trying to shape behaviors related to work, but also outside of work. Another example, they can also monitor behaviors through technologies. One recruiters I interviewed used a very telling comparison. So she said recruiters are FBI agents in the sense that they screen online personal activities of workers, selected workers or candidates, to make sure that they are not involved in concerning activities. But it can go even further. So I interviewed a recruiter who is used a language app learning, so to monitor how candidates progress in learning English. So he said they need good English to get PR. So what I'm working on now is for companies to pay for the language app. You, referring to workers, you gotta send a 45-second video, and if you don't progress, they'll tear up your job. So basically what he's describing is his plan to use a language app that selected workers will be asked to participate, to contribute in during the time their immigration paperwork is processed. And so they are expected to progress in learning English, and there will be some exams in the sense that they have to send video, and their performance and progress is a condition for maintaining the job offer. So it's a clear example of how they can use technologies to make sure that workers selected fit in a certain model. So what it tells us is that low tax, well, it's not new that migrants, there are some kind of migrant workers shopping, but low tax enable new forms of migrant worker shopping. So as commodities, they are filtered online through a range of criteria, many of them discriminatory, such as nationality, age, gender, marital status, and physical characteristics. And low tax also enable new forms of molding and surveillance of migrant workers' behavior, both before they arrive in Canada and while they are here. So from a political science perspective, because I'm from political science, we see that these recruiters, through digital filtering and control, they contribute to the everyday construction of the ideal migrant worker. That is one who aligns with the economic and political interest of the destination country, in the sense that these tools are used to fit some employers' expectation, but also society expectation about who should come in and who should stay also. And yet these practices operate without public scrutiny and escape regulatory oversight. So that's a bit concerning. And I think I will stop here, and I will leave the floor to the other panelists, and will be available to answer your question at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mylène, for this. And this was very helpful and interesting in opening the black box to a topic that is kind of known but often not understood entirely. I remind everyone that the questions and comments are to be done at the end of presentations, but you can still add your comments in the chat. So we'll now do the very technological step of sharing the presentation by our presenter, who's sadly sick. And since this is a presentation about technology, I will have problems sharing my screen. So please be patient with me. All right. And I was also told by my colleague Marie-Jeanne that Marika agreed and consented to have our email in the chat in case some of you might have questions. So I'll ask Marie-Jeanne, please, to add Marika's contact information to the chat. If you want a copy of the presentation, you would like to learn more about our research, she would be very happy to hear from you. So without further ado, I will start the video.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marika Jodek, and I am a PhD candidate in global governance at the Balsillie School of International Affairs, Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario. Thank you so much to the organizers for having us here today and organizing this panel. I know how much work and time it takes to organize something like this, so thank you for having us. Today's presentation of mine is based on a working paper that I developed. I do have a draft, but it's definitely a work in progress. The title of it is Digital Conditionality, Migration Governance, and the Algorithmic Politics of Belonging in Canada. In other words, with digital transformation, how has digital transformation influenced, or is it influencing, migration governance? And here I do look at the case of Canada because I think it's a great case to look at. And of course, I'm Canadian. I'm joining you today from Poland. I apologize for my throat. Already knows I have a nasty cold. So I was going to present my paper paragraph by paragraph, section by section, but then I know that we've been talking a lot about technological advancements, innovation, how it relates to immigration into Canada, migrants. So instead of that, I chose to go via narrative, so storytelling. And let me introduce you to Sarah, a fictional character I came up with. Sarah is an asylum seeker. She arrives in Canada and she is seeking asylum. So in the meantime, before she is granted um, status, if she is granted status, because we don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty and precarity involved with waiting, and as scholarship has shown us, there's a lot of research on waiting. So she is waiting. She has a temporary work permit, which means she is allowed to work and wait while her claim is being reviewed. That involves a lot of conditionality. I don't know how to plan for the future because I don't know if my claim will be approved. What do I do if I have children or other dependents? What if they force me to go back home where obviously I am fleeing something? Well, this is the legal side of conditionality, rights that depend on continuous waiting. Temporary status is something that I have been reviewing for the past few years. It is, it's not easy, but it's becoming more normalized and institutionalized to allow migrants a temporary stay. So you are allowed to come here for the opportunity as long as you do A, B, C, and D and don't cause any problems. So Sarah, this fictional character, while waiting, she tries to find work. She updates her CV. She goes on online portals such as Indeed. However, the algorithmic systems that are screening our applications, and I'm pretty sure everyone here has been through an application process or knows someone who has been, where your CV just doesn't get into the next stage, whether it's because it's flagged for having a non-English sounding name, non-Canadian education, non-Canadian credentials. Sarah has the legal right to work, even though it's temporary, yes, but the digital systems that govern the access to work don't recognize her as employable. So we basically give you the right to work, even though it's temporary, but it doesn't mean we're going to help you access the work because you still have to go through the digital systems that many of us are going through. This is digital conditionality when belonging is governed not only by law, legal status, but by code. Hooray, Sarah's claim is accepted. So right now she has gone from temporary status to permanent status, which is a bit, or she can try to access permanent residency, go towards about have go work towards the path. Hold on one second. Her refugee claim is accepted. She can apply for PR status. But in the labor market, she notices that nothing really is changing. She is working below her skill level. She is underemployed, perhaps only precarious gigs or jobs. The same filters are rejecting her credentials. They are ranking her lower. And we are saying that it's with digital transformations, technological improvements and advancements, it's more meritocratic. It's there's less bias, but really these models are being trained on biased data, biased histories, biased norms that really value certain nationalities, levels of education, or types of education over others. So her legal status has changed. That's a huge thing. And I want to stress how important this is because temporary status, moving into permanent status is so important. It is the bare minimum. But her digital status has not changed. So conditionality, this digital conditionality, it survives the law. Rights are necessary but insufficient. The labor market is increasingly governed by algorithmic visibility. How visible are you? How employable are you? How important are you? Even after permanent residence, the story doesn't end. She becomes a permanent resident. And here I wanted to introduce a very interesting and important a statistic from Stats Canada data analysis that Pico and Who found earlier this year that permanent residence status and even citizenship do not guarantee better labor outcomes, unless those migrants were already performing well before they received those more stable legal statuses. So this is important because in a world where employability depends on digital visibility, continuous activity. How often are you updating your LinkedIn profile? How often are you checking in, looking at your messages? How quickly are you responding? Response rates, algorithms that reward uninterrupted availability, criteria that privilege local experience. So Sarah, our fictional character, she crossed the physical border into Canada, and she crossed the legal border into permanent status, which was so absolutely important because it guarantees her at least a social safety net, which is better than temporary status where it's completely revocable, even more conditional. But she has difficulty overcoming the digital border. And here I wanted to introduce or build on previous scholars' work of intersectional conditionality. Let's pretend Sarah is a racialized woman. Why not? Digital systems reward workers who can be always available, always online, always up to date. And this intersects with gendered care work. She is a woman. She is a racialized woman. Algorithms trained on biased data often rank racialized candidates lower. Again, this is scholarship. I'm not making this up. Obviously, I'm presenting the analysis that has been going on in global North countries for a very long time. Remote work does not eliminate exclusion. Sometimes it amplifies it, as my previous paper showed. So, intersectional conditionality, conditional. The layering of legal precarity, if you are a non-status or a temporary status individual versus a permanent status person. Digital visibility, how visible are you to the algorithmic systems that are ranking you? Racialization, studies have shown, there's a lot of research coming out of Waterloo that shows that racialized immigrant women are at the lowest part of the hierarchy when it comes to the the digital labor market, and then gendered expectations, just like research has shown us during COVID-19, for example, women were expected to continue performing not just at home and at work, but also the caregiving responsibilities were being shouldered by women in many cases, in the majority. So emotional labor, the physical labor, the homeschooling labor, all of that gendered expectations. And I wanted to mention that I have I have been in the digital labor market. I ran a location independent international trade business for 10 years. I know that it's possible to succeed working online, running a business online, and I absolutely adored it. However, I was privileged. I was absolutely privileged with my skill set and a lot of luck and a lot of good fortune. However, as I have been teaching, for example, at Lambton College, international business, marketing, communications, there are a lot of factors that you have to overcome to succeed in today's digitized world. You have to self-market yourself as a candidate. How many times are you updating that profile? How many times are you messaging prospective employers? Are you getting out there? You have to constantly be online available. So Canada's paradox. Canada is a wonderful country. I'm so grateful to be Canadian. I have dual citizenship. Canada describes itself as both humanitarian and innovative, or at least we want to be innovative, even though our recent studies show that a lot of new immigrants are leaving Canada, highly skilled are leaving Canada. But when legal temporariness meets algorithmic evaluation, inclusion becomes something migrants must perform rather than something they have. And here, a recent paper of mine on the theater of protection and temporary status, where we want to proclaim that we are all supportive and we care about the humanitarian ideals of solidarity and compassion. But in reality, something else is happening. By having digital systems evaluate and rank and score, we can say, oh, it's based on efficiency or it's more effective that way. But we are we need to really uncover the accountability that goes behind all of these evaluative systems that are ranking and that are marginalizing certain groups of people even more. What do we do with this, Marika? You've criticized a lot. I do. I'm a critical scholar. So digital systems are migration systems. We can't pretend like they're not the same, even by applying for temporary status, for permanent status, for citizenship. Everything is becoming more digitized. Portals and platforms now co-govern belonging. Rights are not enough without visibility. We need algorithmic accountability in hiring and immigration processes. We can't just tackle one and not talk of the other. Inclusion must be stable, not continuously earned. A just system cannot treat belonging as a performance metric. Now, if digitalization is here to stay, we see that the trend is yes, it's here to stay unless some crazy thing happens. The question is not how to optimize migrants or algorithms. And here, the study is transferable because, yes, it's based on migrants, but you can also look at intersectionality of other marginalized groups in Canada who are having trouble accessing work in a digital system. But how to design systems where belonging is not perpetually conditional on you constantly self improving yourself. And here again, research on FAIR, where the constant neoliberal idea of self-appreciation, where you're constantly investing yourself, where the responsibility goes on to you, the migrant or the individual, to constantly prove to yourself, to society, to the government, and to the workforce that you're good enough, that you contribute, that you should be here, constantly performing this act of you being the best person who should be here. And the article is in the works. You can find me on LinkedIn. I wanted to thank you again for having me today, and hopefully we can stay connected. Thank you.
I would like to thank Marika. I'm so happy she's resting, though she seemed very sick. So hopefully she will make a full recovery. I will now invite Marie-Jeanne Blin, senior researcher at the Institute on Migration and Society and affiliate assistant professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Concordia University, to start our presentation.
Thank you very much. Okay, did you see with the note or without the note?
With the note.
With the note again. Okay, just a second. Okay, and like this. Do you have the note? That's okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. Well, I will be presenting some result from ongoing project. I'm speaking on behalf of a larger team, as you see, with Mireille Paquet, Gwenelle André, and the support of Iris O. I would also like to thank all the allies and community organizations that allow us to meet all the participants, and for sure I must thank all the participants who accept to share their experiences. So there are preliminary funding from a research about the digital transformation of community, public and community services, and what are the opportunities for asylum seekers seeking employment. So I would like to highlight today some political and ethical tension, as we will see. But just before going more further, I will just give you some context. So first of all, well, I think we all know that we are seeing a significant increase in the number of asylum seekers in Quebec, particularly where we have 163,000 persons right now in Quebec. So each year it's about 6,000 persons. The second thing that we observe is at the same time, the digital transformation affects all of us, but it's also reshaping institution and skill and employment. So there's the development of new kind of intervention. There's new way for job search, but that affect everybody. At the same time, the research on digital literacy and migrant integration show that it's more complex than that. And furthermore, the asylum seeker do have digital literacy. Sometimes it's more the heterogeneity. It's more the key word in that case. And the last thing in the context I would like to highlight is in the job market, as we see with the precedent communication, that the asylum seeker do have the right to work. When they file the asylum claim, they ask at the same time for a work permit. It takes about 1 to 3 months, and they have the right to work. But once they are employed, they tend the outcome are very low compared to the other category of immigration. So we see that their professional profile are diverse, but on the job market, they tend to fill lower skilled job in the initial years and have a salary below the minimum standard. So, knowing that, the objective of the research is to examine the use and the effect of digital technology in the job searching of asylum seeker. We had mixed methods, so we reached since last June. The collect of data is still ongoing, so that's why it's not a final result we present you today. So we made 55%, 28 with personal interview, semi-structured interview with the last about 1 hour 45 minutes, and we had 27% respond to an online questionnaire. We have almost the same amount of men and women, the age between 20 and 61 years old, from a diverse region of the world. We have more than 12 countries represented, so like Haiti, Pakistan, Algeria. Well, there's a beautiful representation of country with a great variety of level of schooling, but more with about the half of the person have university degrees. Or some years of university, and about a quarter have high school degrees. So it's a bit of bias of that kind of research. And I can add that they have the asylum seeker status at the moment of the interview, so they are in the country since about 1 year and a half, and about 60% of them have worked or have experienced work before. Okay, I see that there is some chat. I will.
All good, Marie-Jeanne. We're taking
Is
care of
that
it.
okay? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
we're all
you.
taking care.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this encounter, and I will try to share with you some result, but just a little bit before, just to give you the opportunity to follow me before getting into the core of the presentation. I would like to share with you a visual overview of the key stage of the job search process where digital tools come into place. So we see that when we are looking for a job, when there's an interplay with digital technology, there are preliminary steps with administrative procedure to obtain documentations such as work permit, social insurance number, and that kind of thing, finding the organization who can support me. This step could also include, for example, checks for professional recognition. So the second step is prepare for the job search. So doing a CV, preparing for the interview, reviewing and analyzing the job posting and everything. And the third one is approaching the employer. We still need the digital tools, so to apply, to communicate and everything. And the last one, but not the last one in the real world, it's working and sometimes continuing for additional to seek additional opportunities. So we will enter some data with the first paradox, that is the big question: the digital transformation of the organization and services. Is that an easier access for the services? So it's the first question we ask. And to begin, maybe it's important to note that the vast majority of the participants we interview and with the survey have, in fact, a cell phone. For a laptop or computer at home, it's less common, but some of them have one. It's not having access to digital tools. It's not the main problem they encounters. So another thing I could add, it's when we see the digital skill of the participant, we can put them in three groups. The 1/3 report experiences a lot of difficulties. The other third feel relatively comfortable and able to manage. And the final third feel themselves very competent and confident with digital tools and were able to teach me how to use some platform, for example. So among the most frequently mentioned facilitator is having access to internet connection and being accustomed to using digital tools. But there's a lot of heterogeneity in fact. So what I want to share with you is it was very surprising for us, but not completely, but for the strong response we have when we ask them what are the biggest challenges they face when using digital tools looking for work. In the online survey, it was very, very clear for the two first one, that is, there is too much information. I can't find the right information. The government websites are difficult to understand and navigate. And we see as the third one, that is for the language. So it's worth nothing that digital technology themselves can help, but it's more an overload of information, the problem. So we see furthermore the role, the important role of mediators. So one respondent shared with us, Noor, that is a young man having intermittent employment using, in fact, digital platform, but he found it in person. He make a synthesis for us about his relation with new technology and the process for looking for a job. He said, life has gotten easier and harder at the same time. It's easier because you have access to a lot of things. If you have questions, there's a phone number or email address, but it's harder because you don't know if it's a real job, if it's a real opportunity, if you're filling out the right form, if you're making a mistake, there's no one to ask. So, and this person have a self-assessment using the digital technology of 10 on 10. So he was very comfortable in that area. So I'm gonna go with you a little bit more in detail. So I hope that you can follow me in the complexity of my slide. First. We see, as I said a little bit before, that asylum, the profile of asylum seeker is very heterogeneous. Digital technology do not follow a simple continuum from basic to advanced, from using a cell phone to using AI. It's more about, I could say, navigability. How people move through platform system and digital environment, but we cannot classify participant with the status, with the immigrant status, nor with the age or country of origin or level of schooling. We were faced with a lot more complexity to try to find what is the difference in their profile. Some are super comfortable with the digital world, will other experience much more challenge. And what surprised me, initially expected the trajectory in Quebec to reflect a gain in digital literacy, but for some people, in fact, it was more a loss. Not the majority, but 2-3 of them, for example, shared to me that they lose the digital literacy being in Quebec. For example, Alexis shared that before migration, he would have rated his digital skills at 9, but today he would put himself at 4 or 5 at least, because he didn't use technology since 3 years, so he hasn't touched a computer during that time. He had a work in a simple work, so you don't have to use technology in his everyday life. So the other things we see, I'm sure that you know that the bureaucratic literacy appear to be central more than digital skill. And it's not only digital, it depends too of the type of content and the timing. So for example, Dana, she considered herself very literate in digital literacy. She was saying to me, I was reading, but I was not understanding. So, or for example, Hassan, who said to me, I could have done, talking about filling the form, I could have done it, but at the time I wasn't myself sharing with me that at his arrival in Quebec, it was the chaos in his head. So another thing is that we see a lot of exposure during the job search to abuse and fraud. So more vulnerability to be abused, or they ask to send money or to work without being paid, and that kind of thing. So Ralph shared with us, how can I say that, with almost resign, that you have to risk your fear, you have to try, because if you don't have a job, that you're a bit more vulnerable to that, but you don't have choice to be exposed to that kind of thing. In a more positive way, I would add that there's they are essential person, digital intermediaries or facilitator play by organization or person around the individual we encounter. For example, Joy told us that she immediately called her employment counselor when she wasn't sure whether a job offer she received was fraudulent, or many of them, for example, if they have a question how to fill a form, or they know some person who can help them, but it's not for all, and the community organization have a lot of challenges themselves. And the final positive note is that digital technology can also play as a resource for translation, information seeking, and so on. So I think I have 4 or 5 minutes left. No, Mireille?
Yes.
Perfect. So it brings us to our second tension, and people clearly prefer looking for a job online. Clearly prefer to look for a job online, but it doesn't always seem very effective. So in our survey, when we ask participants how they actually got their job, not a single one said, I just apply posting without help. In fact, the vast majority got their job by submitting application in person or with their network. So it was a little bit a surprise for us, but there's a lot of perceived benefit for using the digital technology for job seeking. So there is no distance. We have a sense that we have an increased ability to connect. We have access to communication and information tool. But the disadvantage at the same time is that we do not have response. We do not have feedback. We don't know sometimes how to use it or where to look for. So Priya, she's currently employed and she find it in person. She said, I also try looking for work online and I apply for a lot of job, really a lot, but I never got any reply. In fact, it almost always a rejection, you know. So we have that kind of tension where we really appreciate to do that online, but we do not have any responses. So when we talk about digital inclusion, are we really just talking about that, or should we be more thinking about inclusion more broadly? And I'd like to close with a few reflections. And the result raised some question about the ethical and political dimension of inclusion, how the digital inclusion intertwine with a broader dynamic of inclusion, and how do asylum seekers manage to find a place in the labor market? And another question is, are they able to do in a way that match their skill? And when we say, for example, Joy, currently it's one of the few who are currently working in a sector near our prior experience. She said, I start applying for all kinds of job online, you know. So they could be like a teacher, director, manager, or any kind of work, but they are looking as a nursing assistant, construction work, delivery job, anything at all. So what about professional recognition? We see that during, I'm sorry, I let it in French. We are seeing during their process using the digital school, no one are looking for professional recognition, and nor the organization give them some advice to be able to transfer and to be recognized as professional when they are. And another dimension is the filter in algorithm when they are job offer, such as Sophie, that she said that sometime there's some AI in when they are looking for a job, and this is really make her uncomfortable because she know that the chances are very slim to be able to have this kind of job. So just to finish in that, because I think I passed my time. I just would like to finish with the question: are we talking about digital injunction, and what about inclusion more broadly? So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marie-Jeanne, for a very interesting presentation. And in the interest of time, I will remind everyone that we can do question and answer at the end of the panels, at the end of the presentations, and you can write your questions in the chat. And I will now invite Marco Campagna, who's Knowledge Mobilization and Social Action Coordinator at Access Alliance Multicultural Health and Community Services, to go on with his presentation.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to actually, the last presentation is a nice segue into what I'm going to kind of dive into and talk about digital diversity and how that shapes the employment outcomes, and the fact that digital inclusion is essential for us, but is also, when we look at it in terms of broad inclusion. So to start with, we know, I'm going to go fairly quickly because a few of these presentations have covered some of this stuff. So the things we know that there's rapid digital transformation. We know that there's a big focus on skills and competencies coming from employers, although we're not always sure exactly what they're looking for, and nor are they. We know that navigating the landscape is an increasingly difficult part of settlements, and layers on top of existing settlement navigation, so digital navigation. What are the unwritten cultural codes of digital workplaces, not just the typical Canadian workplace? So digital inclusion isn't just about access, it's ensuring people can take the skills to thrive. use the skills that they bring to thrive in our economy. And so just as sort of some foundational stuff when we talk about digital inclusion, it requires intentionality. It's strategies, but it's also investments. And we're talking about reducing historical, institutional, and structural barriers. So what you see across the screen is, yes, it's about access to devices, the right devices for the right tool. It's also about high-speed connectivity. It's also about the ability to use those tools, so digital literacy. But it also becomes the capacity of our sector as those mediators, those facilitators for newcomers to ensure that we can help support those who may have low technical capacity to develop the capacity they need in order to access the job market. And if we don't, we work with people who are excluded. And again, if we don't address digital inclusion, we risk newcomers becoming further marginalized in their job seeking and their career trajectories in the same ways that they already are when it comes to labor market and employment because of lack of credential recognition, discrimination, racism, the list goes on. So digital exclusion certainly has an impact on the labor market, but it all increasingly has an impact on health, financial, government services, which are becoming digitalized. It has an impact on people's ability to participate in their children's school, with communication systems increasingly moving online, engaging with civic issues, voting, et cetera, et cetera. So when we look at the perspective of how newcomers are using technology, we know that they are mobile first, right? This comes up typically smartphones are the primary means for the way they communicate. We also know that they're using social media and social platforms heavily for pre-arrival. The formal platforms, such as our pre-arrival settlement services, but also the peer information networks. And probably to a much higher degree, those networks provide information that may not be in the mainstream, but also may contain misinformation and sometimes even disinformation. So it can lead to some vulnerability. And some of what I'm talking about, for example, on the left, you see statistics from 2016, and on the right. So on the left, Facebook, WhatsApp, QQ, Facebook Messenger were the top social media platforms. And on the right, it's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, WeChat, into the billions of active users. So these are monthly active users. They have many more subscribed users, but these are the ones who on a monthly basis are actually using those tools. And again, we saw in 2016, much more of the world was accessing the internet via laptops, so in the bottom left, and that has flipped now. So now it's, instead of 60% laptop or computer, it's 60% mobile phones. And we learned a lesson in 2015 in our sector with the influx of Syrian refugees who came as WhatsApp and mobile phone users. And we weren't ready for that because they didn't come with email addresses. They came with WhatsApp. And so we had to shift and pivot really quickly into seeing how tools could be used to serve newcomers in the ways that they were using technology. But we also recognized that we needed to help these folks understand that if they're going into the labor market, especially into any kind of office or knowledge job, they were going to need to use email, Microsoft tools, Office, all of those kinds of things. And so that they came with a high level of digital literacy, but it was very nuanced, it was very specific. And we see that today. So this is from a survey recently from Media Technology Monitor, which has looked for the last few years at the media and digital trends of newcomers in Canada. And we see again, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. But if you notice the difference between the newcomer use of WhatsApp and Canadian, this mirrors what we saw in 2015. When Syrians came here, there were about 1 billion WhatsApp users around the world, but very few in Canada. Now, if you asked anyone in our sector, of course, we're all using WhatsApp because we also discovered that the Brazilians and the Indians and people from various countries, over 200 countries, were using WhatsApp. All newcomers have cell phones. Increasingly, they have computers as well, but it's still only 80%. So they're still mobile first in terms of how they're accessing information. And it's important for us to understand that from a broad kind of statistical perspective like this, but also at the very specific level of the people that we're serving. So what are the strategies that newcomers are using? Again, it's pre-arrival, it's community forums. Increasingly, these are private forums, so WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, WeChat groups, Facebook groups. They're looking to figure out how to match the credentials that they have to show their qualifications, and LinkedIn is increasingly the space to do that because it is the space to do that in Canada, but also globally. And they're sharing resources and opportunities. So they're savvy when it comes to tech. They're resourceful. But that savviness and that the resourcefulness doesn't necessarily connect with the labor market, because what they're good at isn't necessarily what companies are good at. So this mismatch, this digital diversity gap, is something that's really important for us to be aware of, because the employer expectations versus immigrant and newcomer digital practices may create a barrier in the same way that employer in social expectations or economic expectations. We can't expect employers to understand the digital practices of newcomers because they have decided what their practices are, and there must be some conformity to that to get into the workplace. So if newcomers aren't aware of what they need to learn in order to be successful, they're going to face these additional barriers. And those will be layered on top of already challenging issues in the labor market, such as credential, skill, and previous employment recognition. So they're already in a precarious state. Now, employers, this is, Conference Board of Canada, Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Deloitte, and all the other types of consulting firms that are out there, labor market experts. This is what employers say they want, right? They want you to have certain core digital tools. That includes not just the email, but also the etiquette. So that's a communication, cultural kind of, it's another dog whistle potentially. What is your etiquette around communication? Are you able to use the productivity software, the collaborative platforms, the video conferencing that we're using as an institution? But are you also able to show some advanced competencies? Are you security aware? Do you know how to work with cloud computing platforms? Are you culturally fluent? This is the one that we hear a lot, but it comes up constantly, right? Workplace communication norms, but increasingly this infuses itself into the digital with that etiquette, the adaptability to new technologies, and things like that. So we start to see that there's a mismatch sometimes in the digital skills and habits and the digital expectations. And those then are devalued by employers because they're not seen as what they need. They're seen as different and therefore not adequate, right? Different is always bad for employers in many cases. And that comes true when it comes to the digital as well. So employers overlook, as they typically do in a lot of cases, the innovation that newcomers bring, the fact that they're using technologies differently, or the fact they're using different technologies, which could have an influence on the way an employer works. And we saw a bit of that with Milen's presentation, talking about recruiters not really using all the technologies or using them poorly. So if someone is, targeting Facebook ads and they're getting older people, well, that's a mismatch because you can target young people very easily with Facebook ads, for example. So the assumption that the employer skills are higher or better or more sophisticated isn't necessarily the case. And especially if you're increasingly trying to reach a newcomer audience, then employers are overlooking the innovation that is right there at their fingertips with people who come from those communities. So it creates some digital precarity or vulnerability, where newcomers are becoming excluded. And Marika spoke to this very eloquently, right? The systemic algorithmic challenges that use biased data that automatically devalue someone who doesn't fit that biased data, and it's problematic. And so again, from Milen's presentation, so if we need Chinese, we put WeChat. If you need Indian, you go to Telegram. And again, from the global data, we see that's kind of true for China because WeChat is number one, but look at all the other platforms that are highly used. And in India, that's actually Telegram's only the fourth most used platform. So therefore going all the 80% of Indians, adult Indians who use WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook because they're focused on the fourth tier technology. So again, when we're looking at technology, we can't assume that employers know what they're doing either, but we know that we have to help newcomers understand that employer perspective. And that's where that kind of paradox starts to kick in, because that precarity, that notion of vulnerability, when their skills aren't recognized or valued, means that they will persistently be underemployed. There will be consistent barriers to career advancement, even if they get their foot in the door. There will be exclusion from opportunities. They'll start to lose their confidence. All of the things we see already when it comes to labor market challenges for newcomers. And of course, Canada as a country misses the point of immigration and loses the full potential of skilled immigrant talent that comes here. So the gap forward. And Marika is right that the system needs to change, but we also need to recognize that we as a sector have a role to play to fill that gap and bridge the gap while we actually also advocate for systems change. So many organizations do digital training for your clients. You do that now. You're doing either digital literacy training, or you're teaching on cybersecurity, even pathways to cybersecurity careers for people who are shifting career pathways, or you're doing, specific training on office productivity tools like Office or Microsoft 365 and things like that. our mentoring systems need to understand the tech side of things as well. So when mentors are helping newcomers navigate the cultures of Canadian workplaces and helping them make those connections, which statistically lead to higher paying jobs for newcomers, although the scale is very low, they also need to be making sure that they're mentoring them on the digital side of things. We need to this is the advocacy part, we need to try to figure out how do we value the tech innovation, the digital nuance that newcomers bring, that lived experience, along with the formal credentials, but also how do newcomers get those formal credentials? If LinkedIn Learning is seen as a useful credential tool and the certificates that come out of that are valuable to employers, well, make sure that your clients understand that they can get access to LinkedIn Learning through their local library for free instead of paying a monthly fee. Figuring out what credentials employers say they value and making sure that newcomers can access those, with the recognition that even if you get those credentials, you may still be at still precarious and vulnerable because you are a newcomer, and many employers devalue that just by the state of your existence. And so we need, as we already do, is to collaborate with employers, community networks, and as settlement agencies. But there is also a whole host of groups. I'll call them here immigrant influencers. They've always existed as newcomers who are supporting other newcomers. These are, again, those WhatsApp groups, those Facebook groups, immigrantnetworks.com, the online plethora of immigrant created and immigrant focused websites, platforms, podcasts, who are reaching newcomers that we're not reaching through formal and direct service delivery. So we need to be talking to those folks to help make sure that we're connecting both with meeting needs, but also understanding needs that we can incorporate into our programs. We have a couple of models that already exist in our sector, for example, that more of us can do. So there is the digital champion model, comes out of the UK, and there was a project that brought it to Canada through the settlement sector. And so it exists, digital champions exist, but we have to understand that they exist on a continuum as well. So we can be professional digital champions, the one in the middle, where we work for an organization and we're helping provide training and support. But community members are digital champions, and we need to encourage work-based digital champions with the employers that we're connected with. That in that onboarding is to ensure that they're getting onboarded correctly, recognizing they have digital literacy, but it might not be the right one, or it might be nuanced, but that they're not blank slates when it comes to digital. And then there's an American model called the Digital Navigator model, which goes one step deeper and is focused on helping people get connectivity, helping people get access to low-cost equipment, and to build digital skills. So that's for the low tech, the newcomers who may not yet have come, like many newcomers have come, with the digital literacy or the digital skills. We can help them to develop those to ensure that they can fit into the marketplace. Whereas the digital champions, there's a bit of that, but it's also working with people. In our case, the nuance is to help you say, yeah, you're incredible with WhatsApp, but we need you to be incredible with Word now. And what does that mean? So moving that forward is, again, we need to come together. We need to figure out ways to, yes, do that systems change that Marika mentioned, but valuing, helping employers value the diversity of digital practices that exist, building these culturally responsive pathways. But we also need to recognize that we have to bridge in the interim. And as we do that advocacy, we have to bridge the gaps so newcomers understand, how do I position myself so that no one can say no to me because I don't have the right set of skills in this particular case. So I run a website where there's more information about all of this, lots of research that has been mentioned, the idea of what we need to do as a digital settlement agency, and in the slides you'll get the links, but I want to stop there because I'm quite sure there's a ton of great questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, actually. We don't have a lot of time, so I was just told by our very nice technician, and it's not his fault, that we have to leave the room in about 5 minutes. So I would encourage anyone that has a question to raise their hand or write it in the chat, and then maybe what I propose is that we do a round of gathering the question and then answering any question. So I saw that Marie-Jeanne already started to answer some questions that she received in the chat. So if there is any question, and I see a hand here from Joseph Lopez. So Joseph, would you like to ask your question? And we'll collect a couple.
Can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Marco, I'm Joseph Lopez. I'm a settlement practitioner based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I read all your notes, the fact that any employer for that matter, whether immigrant or not, you must match the sorry, a seeker must match the employer requirements for skills. You seem to imply that some newcomers do need to upgrade their skills, and rightly so, which applies to anyone, even if they are here in Canada. But my experience in employment search is even if the same person has the same Canadian and an international immigrant has the same qualifications and skills, even if the international the immigrant has in fact better skills on their resume and paper, it seems like that a number of employers, for some reason or not, you may call it discrimination or racism, still prefer to hire Canadians. What do you say to that?
Thank you for Marco. You
Oh,
are
sorry.
yeah.
I'll jump in really. Yeah, that is an ongoing problem. It's been a problem for decades in our country. It's being made worse by technology in many ways because, as Marika mentioned and Mylan also showed, they can circumvent. I mean, if you can discriminate in another country now with an ad instead of doing it in Canada, like the temporary foreign worker recruiters are doing, then they'll do that. So we have a problem with that. We that is a recognizable problem, and that is
I
something
would
that
be to give others a chance to ask questions. I would just like to give a brief conversation I have in public with the BMO, the bank recruiter. The HR recruiter was specifically informed by the HR manager to not hire immigrants and to hire only locals. So you see, no matter how good you are, there's already a wall.
Thank you for sharing this, Joseph. And I think this is a well-recognized fact, but really important that we continue to highlight it. So we have a question in the Q&A, I think for Marco as well, but also maybe for Marie-Jeanne. How do you suggest settlement organizations who do not have funding for digital literacy sort this issue? Because of course, organizations vary tremendously in the kind of support and time they can dedicate, or resources they can dedicate. So I'll let one of you answer.
I'll just go really quickly. You don't need to create anything new because other settlement organizations have created a monster amount of curriculum around digital literacy that you just need to reuse. And there are organizations even in the UK who have created plain and clear language curriculum around some of these things. And what we saw in a project a few years ago from the YMCA National Capital Region in Ottawa was a small intervention made a huge difference, right? So there is a lot of curriculum, there is a lot of one-pagers, clear language information that you can already access, multilingual videos. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Oh, thank you, Jesse. That is the link. Digital literacy and training opportunities for newcomers. I've cataloged some of that on my site. There's even more that's happening now. So I know we have to wrap up, but talk to your network and find out who's done what. Not everybody is sharing what they've done, but the big ones, ISSBC has created some. There's a lot in the language side of the sector you can access through Avenue and Tutela. There's a lot that you can already use and share and curate for your clients. You don't have to create anything new for the most part.
All right, thank you so much, Marie-Jeanne and Mylène. Any closing word before we wrap this up?
Yeah, maybe just say that digital literacy require time, and we understand that there's a lot of pressure on the organization to be able to mitigate that kind of pressure on the shoulder of the individual right now. So it will be my final word.
Thank you. And Mylène?
But I can just add that these presentations have shown that, all the process of migration from the beginning until the settlement in Canada is mediated through digital spaces where migrants encounter employers, the labor market in general, and other institutions. And so I think it's geographically speaking, we should
Am I the only one who lost Mylène?
No, I've
No?
lost her as
Okay.
well.
Well, digital inclusion is difficult even at P2P. So I think that she probably, knowing her, would have liked us to really think about also the idea of like how do we regulate? And oh, Mylène, you're back. We lost you. No, I think we lost her entirely. So I'll just close this session by just adding that Marco has added a couple of resources in the chat, but also that we have a second session with our session where we can, with our panel, in which we can continue discussing and maybe highlight some of the questions we haven't had chance to discuss. I've copied the meeting link in the chat. So it's Immigration, Work, and New Technologies, Part 2, Access to the Labor Market and Workforce Dynamics. So we look forward to seeing you in about 10 minutes in that other room. And thank you so very much for being here today.